I've seen so many decks that I've recently that are just quad decks, and I say I can see it a mile away.
Just not fearing rejection, I think, is very important, and have no shame in sort of reaching out to people and asking for help. You never know; it's a numbers game.
We always want a big TAM, but I don't want your TAM to be in the hundreds of billions. That doesn't help me. I want to see the TAM SAM SOM actually be realistic, and I want to probably see it bottom up instead of top down, because I want to see how you're thinking about that.
Welcome to the Lightning Round Pitch competition. I'm Taysom Ali, venture partner at 1752 VC and managing director for our startup programs. This episode is something different. What you're about to hear is our 8th edition of the Lightning Round Pitch competition, live with real founders, real judges, and real decisions being made. All right, so welcome everyone. Just a quick intro on us. We're an early stage venture capital firm and accelerator based in Los Angeles, California. We typically invest in early stage tech founders that are at the inflection point of founder-led growth to building repeatable and scalable processes. And for those of you who are actually keeping count, yes, we've been doing this pitch competition since the very beginning. One of our very first ones, we got introduced to one of our portfolio companies, our Exposed. And on the most recent one, we had Taro AI, also a portfolio company of ours. So this is what this is all about. We're actually looking for the founders that are ready to dominate. Not tomorrow, not the day after, right now. Okay. So this is your chance. For those of you on the attendee list, make sure that you introduce yourself on the chat. For those of you pitching today, good luck. But let me just say, we cannot do any of this without the help of some amazing people. So I first would like to acknowledge and thank all the founders pitching tonight, all the founders that applied. Thank you for being here and thank you for being part of our ecosystem. Also would like to thank the team. We had everyone step in to make sure that this was a special event, especially Zank and Retta. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here right now. So thank you. And also thanks to our sponsors and partners, Ramp, Stubbs, and our great friends at Innovent Capital, which we have one of the judges here, Keith. So with that, I'm just going to very quickly set the tone for tonight. So the first hour, we're going to have a chat with the judges that they're investors and they have already built this pattern recognition that most of the founders, they don't get a chance to get access to. Then on the second hour, we're going to have 4 pitches, 10 minutes each pitch, and we're going to announce the winner of the pitch competition. All right, so let's go. I will, at this very beginning, set up the stage. If that's okay, I'm going to read a couple of things out of the background that I was able to get from you guys. So I'm going to start with Zachary Batt, GP of Zendaya Ventures, SF-based, family office, investor, and operator background, 25 plus years working with companies from the seed to growth stage, focus on healthcare, medical devices, and AI. You described that you're looking for AI built for what he describes as measurable human and planetary impact. We're going to have to come back to that, Zachary. Welcome. We have also Keith Older, Senior Associate and Investor at Innovent Capital, family office built by a serial entrepreneur backing early stage tech companies, and a great friend of mine. So welcome, Keith. And lastly, but most definitely not least, we have Kunal Palak, VP of Westbridge Capital, which is one of the largest Asia's crossover fund, now actively operating in the US market. You said both on the investor and the founder side. Now on the investor, you focus on vertical AI, voice AI, and enterprise automation. I hope that the description that I had was accurate, but most importantly, those are found on your websites, your LinkedIn. But I actually want to know, and I bet that the founders here also want to know, what's the 1 or 2 things about how you decide which companies to invest with your background that are not in that bio? Maybe let's kick things off with Keith, just because you're on top of my screen.
Well, one of the things that we look for that really you can't be described necessarily in a bio is who the person really is and how they're going to handle pressure, right? I think very early stage, things are going to hit the fan. You might need to pivot. And so trying to understand like the tenacity and the grit of the founder in front of us makes us a lot more comfortable that the capital is in good hands, because it might not end up going toward the idea that you started with, but we're investing in the person that's going to go pursue whatever they think is a good use of that capital. And that's where we're putting the money into, not necessarily the idea itself.
Nice. I see a lot of funds that they put that founders first, or they always looking like early stage is founders. Is that basically what you're saying, or does it has like a slight difference?
I think it is the founder first, but I also think it has to do with a little bit less about their own experience as a professional and more about who they are as a person, right? So their integrity speaks a lot more to me about who they are and how they're going to be a steward of capital than necessarily, their degrees or who they are as like a professional.
I think thanks, Keith, for that. That is really important, I think, on the founder part of that. And it seems like the more I get into this, I've been investing since 2020 and in the space, and now mostly in med tech and biotech. Now I'm really focused on enterprise and AI and pharma, things like that. I think the most important part is certainly the academics and the kind of technical background is really valuable, but just how their team works together and how they're thinking about the market that they're going after and understanding what gates and what pathways need to be pursued to clarify, eliminating uncertainty. And like, are they aware of the things that really it takes to push these things through? Where are they good listeners to advisors and taking in the inputs? Can they formulate and take a pivot, just like he said? Can they take an idea and actually add to it the advice that they're getting? So I really look for founders are really an important part, and then understanding the pathway to commercialization is really probably number two.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so far, a common theme that, early stage investors, we're usually looking at the founders, right? The founders, domain knowledge, the ability to execute the go-to-market strategy. At the end of the day, that is what's going to determine, right, a successful company or not. Kunal, do you have a different view? And if you agree with them, like, what specific things would you be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, all things I look for as well. I slightly invest at a little bit later stage. Series A is my sweet spot, and so what we're looking for is a little bit of momentum in terms of customer additions, in terms of growth. Number two is also what are customers saying about you, And to me, a question I like to our customers when I talk to them is, hey, if tomorrow this tool that you're using disappears, would you be fine, or how unhappy would you be if this tool that you're using doesn't exist? And if they tell me that, hey, without this tool, I cannot do my job, like I will simply quit. I'm like, great, there is PMF there. But if they say, yeah, if this tool doesn't exist, you know what, I can make do with some Claude. I do something in Claude and I can, it takes me 5 more minutes, but so what? It's fine. I can live without, and I can live without it. Like, to me, how deeply are you solving a customer's problem? And how unhappy would they be if your tool doesn't exist is kind of a big indicator of PMF, and that's what I'm looking for.
Nice. I actually want to get this a little bit more concrete for each one of you, because let's say that early on, Keith, you receive a deck on your desk. What are the information that you're going to be looking at that deck to decide if it's worth your time to have a meeting with those founders?
That's a great question, because we actually we ended up moving our thesis a little bit down the line, right? So we were seed investors before, now we moved into Series A. And one of the reasons that we did that is because we realized that the things that we're looking for are a little bit more concrete in the Series A, even though the information is kind of the same. So because we're operators ourselves, we're actually looking for a lot of validation in terms of how you're thinking about the trajectory of your business, right? So how are you thinking about your cap table so far, and how you've doled out your equity? How are you thinking about where you're going to be placing the money that you're trying to raise? That's a really important one to us. If it's just a vague, well, half's going into marketing and half's going into the business, that's not specific enough. I want to see that you've really thought out, right? Who are your key hires that you are going to need to make your pipeline work? Who is in your pipeline, and who have you converted so far, right? What does your pipeline look like a year ago, and what does it look like now? And have you actually followed along with what you're doing? So for us, it's a lot of the basic fundamentals. I want to see that you're thinking very critically about your business, and that you know it inside out, upside down, because you're the person I'm trusting to actually have the the wherewithal to get to the finish line.
Nice. Is there any indication of the deck that there is a sign that the founder does know the market that they are in and has a unique perspective that others wouldn't otherwise have?
It's kind of funny. It's kind of the opposite of what people might expect, right? I think like we always want a big TAM, but I don't want your TAM to be in the hundreds of billions, right? Like that doesn't help me. Right? I want to see the TAM SAM SOM actually be realistic, and I want to probably see it bottom up instead of top down. Because I want to see how you're thinking about that, right? What do you think you can charge for your company? Can you back that up with your first pilot customers or your design partners that are showing, how much they're willing to pay for this and what the market is? And then who actually can you attack in your pipeline that's going to get you to the revenue that you think you can get to justify your object, your obtainable market. So I think for that tells me a lot about a founder, right? It's not the big fluffy number that looks like a pie in the sky. It's something that actually makes sense and is something that like you're eager to attack and you've got a plan.
I saw a couple of smiles when you said the large TAM. So, Kunal, you were smiling on that. I'm curious to know your thoughts on around what Keith just said.
No, I smile because there was a deck I recently read, and they had a market there with the T in there, a trillion. And to me, it was like, wow, I mean, this is just absolutely bonkers. And so, which is why I was reminded of that. And honestly, I think founders should know that I do not trust any of the TAM numbers they give me, because obviously they have an incentive to make them as big as possible. And if a TAM number is too big, that's also a red flag. And I don't mean in a trillion, that's obviously a red flag, but even in the hundreds of billions, as Keith was saying, because if the TAM was so big, then obviously there would be many companies going after the same market, and then the question is, hey, why are you the person, or why would you win it? And having a realistic sense of what the TAM is very important, because then you're building a very real company. If you don't have a good sense of the handle on the numbers, then unlikely that you know anything else in the business as well, because that's kind of where you start off with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And your focus on AI, vertical AI, what are the specific metrics that you're going to be looking for, not only to demonstrate that it's indeed an AI native platform, not just a wrapper, and that it does have a moat, right? The moat might not be fully developed early on, but that as more users, more data comes in, that they would have. What do you look for in the deck, right? Before talking to the founders, that could help you validate that.
Yeah, I mean, the deck is the deck is, hopefully it's not too long. Usually, I just glance through it for a couple of minutes and able to get a gist of what it is. The first few slides of what the product is and how it's solving it is very important. For me, what's important also to look at, hey, this is what was happening before our product, this is what's happening after our product. And to me, that's a single slide. To me, that just informs me that, hey, I should talk to this person or not. And the way they're solving the problem is essentially, you can tell that, hey, is it AI native, or is it something that you can do a cloud around it. And to me, wrappers are not bad, honestly. The way I think about this is there's an engine in the car, and then the car on top of it is the wrapper. Now every car is different. You don't just take the engine. You can't do nothing with the engine. You have to build a car on top, and there's a Ferrari, and there's a Mercedes, and there's a Toyota, and there's different cars for every need. So what is your car doing? And that's kind of the question I'm asking.
Interesting. I like that. The wrapper not necessarily is a bad thing. So if it's just a wrapper, how can they defend their positioning?
That's what it's like. You're building a car, and today you have an engine. Maybe you just build a very simple car today, and tomorrow the idea is, how can you get from that just a simple layer on the engine to a more evolved positioning where, hey, the car eventually evolves into becoming a Ferrari or becomes something else. So at the day one, you're just an engine. You just harnessed a little bit of a crankshaft to it, and you put wheels on it, and you're driving. You don't even have a roof. You're just driving. So at that point, obviously, you don't see where the car is going. But the question is, what are you building? Once you keep building on top of it, what does the car eventually end up becoming? And then, of course, you're defending that.
Got it. So it goes to your point earlier, the before and after vision that the founder has by their solution, right?
Yeah.
So, interesting. So I kind of my first thought there with the car analogy was thinking of Lamborghini and the tractors and how they ended up turning into the beautiful sports car that we have today. And Zachary, moving on to you, just like going back to your bio, when you talk about the AI built for measurable impact, what is actually like what are you evaluating? What are you looking for in the pitch deck?
Yeah, it's interesting because I try to look at, I incorporate a bunch into whether it's disruption and how are they going about being a disruptor for an incumbent that's in a space? Are they going to add to top line revenue, or are they just displacing an incumbent, for example? Who is their example of who they're going after? It gives you an opportunity to understand where their exit path might be, and giving you an understanding. So I mean, I'm looking at metrics like I got into med tech around what's the volume, and I agree totally about SAM and SOM and TAM and the metrics that you get thrown in front of you. Usually, when you see a good bottoms up approach to those, you really see some measurable practicality kind of like right away to see, what is your velocity to getting to market? What are the regulatory challenges? What are the kind of go to market strategies that are going to really move the velocity of the company that you're bringing forth into the market? And then how do you go to market? So all of those pieces are kind of where you're putting, say, your budget, where I do less early stage stuff now from just lessons learned in getting into venture that puts me more into that Series A through C rounds and really growth thinking, strategic partnerships, and things like that. But I mean, just to answer your question, come back to your question, is like, are there measurable numbers in the market that can tell me how many are used, where are you coming from, and how are you getting to market, whether your channels, and really seeing that. So, I mean, it's maybe a little more pointed in the biotech, medtech space. But now that I'm more looking in the AI, it's like, where's that moat that you mentioned? And whether it's data. I do like the analogy of the car and the engine, about that, Kunal. And I think that's a really good example because you meet people that are not maybe native AI, but they've got a great solution that's getting some traction. They may have are they going to be able to sustain some velocity or get up to the velocity that's necessary? So I'm really kind of looking for the teamwork and the thought about how do I hyperscale? How am I preparing myself for the scaling up within the organization and within the enterprise or the customer community? So I'll give you that. That's my answer.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And I think just going back to the connector of the wrapper doesn't mean then because the moat is not going to be the technology itself, right? It's not going to even be the data if they are not improving and enhancing the model. But it seems to me that you both are saying if they're solving a real problem, then customers will want it. Therefore, distribution now becomes the most important thing. And do you agree? Am I correct on, like where I ended up landing? And Keith, would you agree with that?
It's interesting because I think it depends on the industry, right? Like if you've got something that really is defendable and like defensible with IP and technology, right? If you're coming out of the university and you've got 3 patents under your belt that you're licensing and taking to commercialization, then IP still is a moat. If you're just doing like a straight up AI play and like you're using AI to speed up software, I think there's less of a moat in the technology, and it doesn't just come down to distribution. I think it also comes down to, and I think you said this, Zach, is velocity. And so if we look at velocity, it's not just straight up traction. I think that was something that kind of I was looking at in the chat. It's not just traction in the way that you'd think about it linearly in terms of number of customers, right? The distribution, if we're taking that approach, is not just the customers, right? It's the advisors that you've got on your side. It's the team that you are stacking around you. It's the people that you're surrounding yourself with. It's the strategic investors you're going after that are going to open doors for you. And so that all does go back to distribution in terms of how you're positioning yourself. But I think there's also a lot of strategy there of you have all of these elements that can open doors for you and like create success, but you have to be the person that creates the strategy to figure out how you're going to weave that, right? Like you've got to be the person that knows how to ask for the right things at the right time and when you're ready to take those things, right? If you're trying to approach enterprise customers and you don't feel like you're not in a place where you've got your business that is ready to get those customers, you're not ready to actually hit that pipeline. And so you need to make sure that you're strategically placing yourself in the right place at the right time so that when that opportunity comes knocking, you're ready to answer the door and you don't fall flat on your face. And so there's a lot of strategy there in terms of the distribution to make sure right place, right time, and that you've got the right ways to open the doors you need to open to get to where you want to go.
That's a great answer. And I'm going to open to all the judges here now because I hear a lot of the times founders say that they do not have the right network to be connected to people that are going to open those doors. Is there any sort of advice that or ways that you see that founders can go about that? Because it's absolutely right. If they don't surround themselves with the right people that are going to enable that growth, things are going to be a lot harder. So does anybody have any thoughts on what can founders do to overcome that?
Well, I'm just to chime in a little bit on that is that I think in my experience is that things change from when you started as you go on that journey, and before too long, there's surprises that founders and the people around them have to be valuable throughout the journey and aware of things that are changing, whether it's the regulatory landscape or maybe there's a native AI play that's going to disrupt your architecture, that maybe you get into a conversation with the right buyer and you fall short of kind of knowing what's happening. And so I'd say having the right advisors that are paying that know the pulse of the kind of velocity, because things are moving very fast, and what you thought they were when you started off could change and you need to pivot. Or actually, it used to be people talked about pilots, and now we're talking about transition plans from engagement to annual contracts. And you're doing more than just what you learned when you started. And so I just think that I attend a lot of events, and just in the short time, things have changed so much. And just that's where you talk about velocity, or people paying attention to the things that are going on, even monthly, the progress that's being made as things. If you've seen this pitch has been out there for a couple months, maybe something's changed. So I'll give that back to the floor.
I was just gonna say that I think that is the question of how do you, it's a cold start problem, right? You don't have any network in a space, and you're trying to crack into it, and that's where you have to be very creative in how you go about it, and that's where a person who's a hustler at heart is able to showcase their skills. And it could be too simple, like cold emailing, something very simple. In fact, the last investment I made was I cold emailed a founder, and I send hundreds of cold emails every day, hundreds of cold messages on LinkedIn. And you may not get a hit every time. I send 100, I get 1 2 responses, and when I do it over a period of 3 months, I end up with one connection which was like fabulous. And so just not fearing rejection, I think, is very important. A lot of people are very conscious of, and also they feel a little bit of shame in approaching people and asking things for people. But you gotta do what you gotta do, and have no shame in doing sort of reaching out to people and asking for help. You never know. It's a numbers game.
Absolutely. I say that we're in the business of saying no and receiving no all the time.
All the time. My principal's got a good metaphor that I think of pretty often now, which is this idea that when you're building a brick wall, right, you're laying brick by brick by brick, and like it doesn't feel like much until after you've laid a bunch of bricks, and then you stand back and you're like, wow, I've like actually built a wall. And it feels like connecting and also building a business is just like that. It's like you kind of putting one foot in front of the other for quite a while, and then every once in a while you kind of look back and you're like, okay, like I'm a lot further than I was when I first started, right? And that's the same for seeking out investors. It's the same for building your business. It's the same for structuring your team. Like all of that is like brick by brick by brick. And then, eventually you're like, wow, I've actually gone a long way. So like it's a slog. It just is. Like it's there's no way around it. That's why, one of the things my principal also says is don't be an entrepreneur if you're in it for the money, because like it's a while out till you get to to the fruitful exit. You got to really be in it for the love of the game.
Absolutely.
I think one thing just to add to that, one thing I do notice is that if you're coming out of academia and you're moving forward and you're kind of sludging through the game plan that you've put in front of you, is you need to bring, and you mentioned advisors, and how do you stay, keep the wins in your sales with the right advisors, is that there's a time when you have to actually have that representation in those circles around you that are more than just maybe the academic value that you gain to get into what you're doing, but you have to be able to bring more of that strategic advice around you. Because if I get to a Series B round and I'm seeing that there's still just academic advisors around this through the kind of in-kind contributions that they're making, you're slow to get the real commercial advisors around you that you need to at that time.
Yeah. I see that a lot with the med tech. There's a lot of it in this space. Have a question over here on the Q&A that I actually think it's worth me asking right now. If you get a cold outreach, right? Cold, it's not coming from a referral, an introduction from someone. Do you require a pitch deck or no pitch deck? It's fine before you actually decide hopping on a call with them.
I think it's like what I prefer, and I think it's person specific. I prefer a short, brief, a blurb, and a short blurb with why, about the company, and then if there's more interest, I can always follow up and ask for more materials. It's always, it's a little bit of, you don't want to share too much. Then why would I talk to you? I got everything I need to know from your deck itself, right? So it's a little bit of not sharing too much, but not too little, enough that you're intrigued to talk. Is kind of my mantra.
Interesting. What goes into that short, brief paragraph? Because I see long emails describing everything, all the highlights, the lowlights, and I'm like, I didn't even read, just archive.
Yeah, I think to me it's about a little bit about the product, one or two lines, a little bit about the traction and where you are, and it could be, pilots or any other stage, and then what's the ask? I'm looking to raise XYZ, blah blah blah. This is what I've raised so far. It's just like a very 5, 6, 7 line paragraph is enough. Just going into the whole story about problem, why I started this, it's all kind of not needed at that point.
Yeah, that all could go into a conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's the details, we don't need the details. I want to zoom out a little bit, right? Because we touched briefly on the point of how fast things are moving. And that is because we are in a very specific moment in time, right? If you look around, AI is absolutely everywhere. I want to know if each one of you has a unique perspective on where we are in the AI curve. So maybe Zachary, because you have like 25 plus years of experience and you've seen multiple tech cycles. So where are we right now in the curve? Do you think we're early still, like just beginning? Do you think that we're in a hype or something that, like we don't even know yet?
It's interesting because yes, I've got a little tenure in the industry. So, there is, we're moving so quickly in the AI, and you hear conversations about decisions of security and my privacy of my of my information, my data, and that is quickly moving to trust and adoption very quickly. It seems like I'm still hearing conversations in circles about, oh, we kind of want to vet through the governance and the conversation. But there are organizations that are moving through this pretty quickly, and they're actually getting value very soon on these projects, say 60 to 90 days, and they're seeing they're and it's this kind of whole build versus buy consideration where organizations are taking on this, so let's explore and what we could build and what tools we might use, and somebody architect or give me advice about what it is. But there are companies that the buy situation is moving into, 80, 75, 80% solutions where they could actually learn and the enterprise adopt the capabilities and put the tools in the hands of their enterprise. that seems to be moving pretty quickly. That's it's like the dot-com moved pretty quickly. And everybody had a web page and everybody was like, oh, well, we've got e-commerce and where we're headed. Um, there is still a lot of caution. We're in this kind of, if you think about the adoption curve and there's early adopters and the moderate adopters, that the early adopters are moving and they're really looking for retaining value and getting forward. So, I think just looking back at that in comparison is this is probably moving faster because there's a fear of not getting the benefits
Mhm.
of their organizations or having a strategy that's moving from conversation into actual investment and moving into these places to start somewhere, get it in the hands of your organization. So you know I did a lot of BD work on the enterprise side. I worked for Deloitte and Accenture in my background, and um, this seems to be a faster cycle. If you can get your products into the hands of the it's interesting because the stakeholders are bringing these to the table, but they still go up to the C-suite before investments are being made. So it's like how fast and can this get to those decision makers quickly? So just a little bit to answer your question on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the adoption, right? Kunal, you have the focus on the vertical AI. Do you see that companies, like what kind of companies are actually adapting to the age of AI? Is there any
Um,
misconception that we have? Because like it was on the news, like the JP Morgan spent millions of dollars with Anthropic and it was a mess and they had to revert everything back. So there is a little bit of a disconnect, right? On the what can AI do now, the expectations that people have, and the adoption curve itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a natural, cycle to adoption. There's a hype cycle. People expect a lot to come off it, and then it underwhelms them, and then slowly the capabilities of any technology creep up, and then they get good. And so in the world of venture, the hype is needed because hype draws capital, and without the hype there would be no capital, honestly, right? Like so this is just the natural way of the world, and that's why you always see these boom and bust cycles, and it is not new. It is, even if you look at the 100 years ago, there was a railway boom and bust. People were like, oh my god, railways are the best thing ever, it's going to change everything, let's invest in lay millions of miles of railways. So to me, it's just a natural order. I think, at least if you zoom out and look at the world from a 10, 20, 30-year lens. But to your question about vertical AI, I think the AI lends itself well to very specific tasks, and specific tasks are industry specific, which is where vertical AI is best suited to solve for. I think today, I've always been surprised by what my expectations were, and maybe I always under expect of what AI can do and what it has been able to do, be it in any vertical so far. So, and I do a lot of customer conversations on a regular basis, and I've only seen customers being very surprised and happy by what AI can do, especially the mundane stuff they hated to do. They're like, thank God AI can do this.
Yeah,
I have more time.
absolutely. I mean, with Claude Cowork, there's so much of the admin work, right? That it's just repetitive that could be easily automated. But I now more and more in my mind, it makes sense of why you mentioned the wrapper being okay. Sort of like laying down, staying like in the application, perhaps the orchestration level of the AI, right? That the workflow, it's one of the most important processes, not so much the model, but it's what do you like, what is the day-to-day like, and how can you adapt and teach the models how to perform that task? So it makes perfect sense. And Keith, how are you changing? Like, what do companies today, early stage startups today, need to have in order for you to fund them, in order for them to get a check from you?
Are we talking specifically AI?
Specifically the age of AI, correct?
I mean, I want to see you using it at least for the administrative stuff, right? I want to see some loops that otherwise would have been stuff that would have taken you hours being replaced by AI, but it's the simple stuff, right? Like I want to see some of your marketing flows being kind of replaced or augmented with AI. I want to see you using that for, using Claude Code, using Claude Cowork inside of your organization so that your devs can move a lot faster. Because if they're not using Claude Code or some sort of CLI to help speed them up, then they're behind the next guy that's trying to do the same thing right down the street, right? So I want to see that you're thinking very critically about how you're using this technology to make it fast and robust and creating yourself, like you said, orchestration layers where you've got a library of skills that you can fire up inside of your business to tackle even the small things, right? It doesn't have to be the big stuff, right? You don't have to be a one-person company that is driven by AI, but you do need to be using some technology inside of your loops to make your life easier. And I don't think it should be drafting all of your emails, and I don't think it should be writing all of your LinkedIn posts. That's my opinion.
Not even on the ghost mode that we can use with Claude that it makes it more human.
I think that you should still have a human in the loop. I think it's okay to like draft things and get some ideas and kind of get a basic structure down. But I don't think that I think that and that's one of the things about this cycle speeding up actually is I think the pendulum is already swinging where people are getting fatigued by seeing posts written by AI on the internet, and we need to bring back a little bit of authenticity into the content that we're building because it's going to go a long way, right? Like now authentic content is actually going to stand out more than the AI labeled the AI generated stuff because it all kind of looks the same. Or if you are going to use AI to generate your content, spend a lot of time into, go into Claude Design and actually start working on, your brand that you're actually putting in there, right? The designs that you're actually building out, that's going to be the structure for the background for your company of all the content that you're putting out. Make it look unique, make it look like it's not just, coming out of, a zero shot Claude prompt, right?
Yeah, that makes sense in my mind because everybody's like, we're going with the hype. It's nice. Maybe it can replace, it can do the job for us, but eventually it's going to land where AI then becomes a tool, just a leverage for us to get to the final work.
I think that's where people are missing it. I think that actually is that's where AI actually is right now. I think it is a tool that we should be using, and it shouldn't be replacing the human aspect of our work. I think that's where the pendulum is swinging, right?
Hmm, makes sense. Where do you feel like we are into this curve? Because one thing is where the technology itself is, like Keith said, right? A tool. The other one is the perception that people have, which is I want to replace my work or AI is going to replace my job. There's a little bit of disconnect, but is there still more room for AI to change the way that we work, change the way that we live our lives? Change, pretty much everything? Or are we on a hype that the numbers that we're saying is never going to materialize? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's only getting started. I feel the capabilities of what AI can do. We're just at the starting point of what to come, and I mean, it's failure of my imagination to see what can come. Uh, it's just 3 years ago, if you would have asked me models can do this, what they do today, I would have said hell no. But they can, and so I've been wrong at every step in the capabilities of the model, and so I've stopped predicting. I'm just riding the wave to see to where it's going. But to your question about how it changes people's jobs, I think I guess it will change everyone's job. There's no doubt about it. Some slow and some faster, But I guess if you have any specific job in mind, we can talk about it. But there's some when there's more element of your judgment, some where there's less element of judgment. And if what you can do can be done by anyone else immediately with very limited training, then yeah, I mean it's a machine could learn it very quickly.
I'd have to add to that, I think, and I see it in political settings, enterprise settings, manufacturing, where the opportunities are bringing more capabilities to where, yes, I might have this automation and it's not going to eliminate the job. It's going to actually bring about more capabilities to say, instead of doing 3 operations in a day, they're doing 10. Or instead of manufacturing 50 parts, they're going to manufacture 100 parts. And that still needs the skill set being, there's still I think there's always going to be some factor of human in the loop that's going to be playing a part of like making it work. And that's why upskilling your workforce to be more aware is such a critical kind of awareness of what it's going to take to use AI and benefit from it. So I kind of my experience in recent weeks have been, you find people in the room that are like, oh, this is evil, and or, we're all gonna suffer if we do this. And there's the other champions that are like, no, we're gonna be able to do 10 times what we've done. And so, I mean, you see a bunch of difference in culture that are as it gets introduced into reality versus kind of what you see in the social talk about it. But I think most of it's going to lend to like new skills. It was the same thing in the .com, and we saw it in like moving to the cloud. Was that another cycle, and some are going to be moving slower. And if you really want to be a part of it, I tell my kids, learn AI because. And my son is like, no, I'm a musician. I'm going to be authentic to myself. And my daughter is younger, is like, hey, I get it, Dad. She does property management and she needs to learn all the skills on marketing. So I think it cascades a lot, and you see a lot of different opinions about it, but it's not going to go away. I think it's just even personally being able to do much more with high quality. You do need your own personal touch to it. Don't just generate everything by AI, but it gives you a lot of advancement in what you're doing. I've seen so many decks that I've recently that are just Claude decks, and I say I can see it a mile away. And give it your own personal touch. They're great, um, great tools to use, but also that human touch is a great factor.
Absolutely. I think it was this morning, our team was literally talking about that, the Claude decks. It's obvious, right? AI, it's obvious when AI is doing the work and there's not that human supervision or the human touch. And I think this is one of the things, right, that everybody I make the joke that at one point in time, everybody was the blockchain or Web3, and then 2023 they started changing to AI, right? The dot AI. But there are some companies that, especially with the velocity and and how easy it is to build, that they're building product, not building a solution, right? There's a different thing, right? I truly think building a product and building a true solution for a real problem to a specific group of people, it's different than just building an app on Cursor. Could that, like the facility of how people are building and startups seeking funding, it's an enormous amount. Could that be an indicator of a potential bubble? Is that bubble going to be like, do you think that this bubble, we're getting closer to it?
I don't know if I don't know if I'd call it a bubble, because I think that AI like, has a lot of great use cases, and like we are seeing like people being able to build and augment their work, right? Like I think blockchain was kind of a solution that was kind of searching for a little bit of a problem, right? Like people were trying to use it in different ways, and everybody was throwing blockchain into things where it didn't necessarily need to exist. I think that's happening with AI a bit, but I think it's because, well, right now we're not paying a rack rate for tokens, right? And so we're starting to see that kind of unravel, where the enterprises are now starting to have to pay for the usage that they're doing, and now they're realizing that the ways that they're playing with AI, if it's not productive, it's actually going to start costing them a lot of money, and they're starting to reflect that in the P&Ls, and they're like, okay, this actually we got to figure out how to slow this down a little bit. So I think that's where kind of what Kanal mentioned, the wrappers, I think the evolution of that is actually small language models that start to be pretty specific in terms of industry and in terms of problem solving, where when the foundational models start to become really expensive for just broad uses, and you're trying to just use them to put a square peg in a round hole, you're going to start to find businesses that are solving specific problems inside of industries that are training small language models specifically on use cases. You're already starting to see that in physical AI, where it's like, we're designing small language models specifically for these robots that does this thing, and like we're going to make it the best. Like the language model is going to be specific to, or the model is going to be specific to how this robot needs to move and interact with a part. And I think that's going to be true in a lot of enterprise businesses as well, where we start to, we have a stack of models and we're pulling them based on what we're using them for, and the orchestration layer is going to be the center there. And I think I was just in Silicon Valley this week, and there were like 8 different people I talked to that were building orchestration layers inside of enterprise, because they realized that that's a big problem, where you've got all these systems, and even though you've got AI in the middle, it doesn't know how to make all the things work. And so I think those workflows are going to get a lot more flushed out.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I mean, either small language models or open source. I think I was tracking some data from Open Router, and they track token volume by model, and the open source Chinese models have such high volume I wouldn't have expected. So that's another thing which I think will see a big rise and come back.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it, Keith. Really, the enterprises are getting an idea about the economic kind of structure of the token and cost of owning this stuff versus just playing around with it and having a subscription that you really, and I think organizations are starting to get their heads around, let's really look at the architecture that can be best suited for the use and their journey into adopting AI, and start from a good economic perspective, because they are turning things back. They are turning things back. Any kind of build projects that are going on, and as they expand the user base for them, they're saying, "Whoa, this is going to hit my P&L at some point in time."
Especially if you're a publicly traded company, you're gonna get hit hard. We're saying that, right? The capex that it's going into rebuilding AI, it's a lot. So I know that we're almost at time. I do have one final question. So what is the it factor that you look for in order to write a founder a check?
It does come down to the fundamentals, right? And so if the fundamental boxes are checked, I think really it has to be my belief that the problem you're solving is one that resonates with our firm, right? I have a pretty specific investment thesis. I have to check all the boxes on your business, but I also have to check all the boxes on where I think we can add value. And if we can't add value to what you're solving, and we can't see like the big problem written on the wall, even if you've got all the things I would look for in a company, if I can't get behind this big problem that you're solving, and like I need to believe in your vision, right? Like you're selling me your vision for what you're trying to build and the problem space that you're going after. And so even if all those boxes are checked, you've got the deck, the P&L looks good, cap table's clean, you've got a good team. If I don't understand the problem you're trying to solve, and it could be a me thing, right? You could be a biotech startup, but I don't have the ability to underwrite that. I'm going to pass on that, not because you don't have all the things in place that I'd look for, but because I actually don't understand enough about the problem set that you're attacking to be able to justify that, that I'm the right investor to write a check for you. And so I need to have a good understanding of what you're doing. I need to be able to wrap my arms around it, and I need to be able to figure out where I think I'm going to be able to help you and where you're really curious and pressing on what you're trying to go after.
Makes absolutely sense. And it sort of goes back to Kunal's points earlier, the vision, right? Before and after. Kunal, what is a factor for you?
I know I've thought a lot about this in the last few years, and I think ultimately it has come down to the fact that every investor in a year can write whatever, 2, 3, 4 checks. I can't do more than that because I have limited time and I want to work really closely with the founders I invest in. And so ultimately it boils down to the fact that, hey, imagine I only have one bullet left. Will I shoot this bullet now, or will I be like, maybe there's another target coming up later? And the answer to that question is not an objective answer. It is just a voice from inside of your heart which says, yeah, this is it. And that feeling comes from many different angles. I think a part of it comes from the rapport you have with the founder, that, hey, do I trust this person? Like, imagine people are writing checks for people who met for just a couple of hours. Like, how much time does an investor spend before writing a check? 5 hours? They do like 3, 4 meetings. Maybe they go on lunch, dinner, maybe 10 hours. Is that enough to know someone? Not really. So ultimately, it just boils down to the fact that, hey, do I trust this person to cut a $30 million check and put my career on the line? Because, that's ultimately, investors are also making a career and also trying to make money. So to me, it's that factor which ultimately makes me want to write a check or not write a check in spite of ticking all the boxes.
Makes sense. Zachary, bring us home.
Just all to that, I'd say, when you're seeing efficiency with capital and responsibility for the capital, it's really important that you see the depth of their kind of responsibility of that capital and owning it. And you can see it in whether it's their due diligence room and they're giving you great disclosure about everything and what maybe even if there were challenges or setbacks. But I really look for that it factor is really about the integrity of the individual and the team, as Keith mentioned, that you feel you can get behind and go on this journey without a doubt of your ability to share and get the real details about where things are at or the updates are real versus just I'm going to I'm going to raise capital and I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it myself. So you can catch up on some of those things very key to observations on how the team's working, the ability to execute on the plan, and are they really thinking things, not just presenting them, but actually do they have some proof that they're executing, or they have a plan ahead of them to execute? So, it's one of those kind of characters things and I want to go on this journey with this person or this team, and can I do that? So that's the last kind of checkbox of getting behind a check and saying, because I'm more of an investor operator, as we kind of hear this as well with Keith and Kunal, is like we want to see this thing be successful. That's why we're in it, and we want to see the returns.
And that's a great place for us to stop, because we're going on a journey, right, with the founders, and they need to understand that if there's not that connection there, and then by the connection is a little bit of a likability, but it's like the shared vision and the ability to be coachable. Not everyone has that, so it's a journey that one of my friends said this the other day, that it's longer than most California marriages. And it stuck with me. But with that, Zachary, Kunal, Keith, thank you very much for sharing your insights. Truly appreciate you all. That is all from me. I am going to hand over to Zhang, and he is going to be leading the hour that everybody wants, the final pitch competition. So judges, we can all go off camera so we can have the pitch, the founders pitching. And once we're ready to do the Q&A, we'll come back.
All right. Thank you, Thaisa, for handing over the meeting. And thanks again for the judges, Kunal, Zachary, and Keith, for sharing your insights. One metaphor that stuck with me from Keith is how in venture capital we do things brick by brick. And I hope tonight's event will be the keystone event for many of the founders in front of us. Let me also thank the amazing applicants we have for this event. So they have made up a very competitive application pool, and thus we should acknowledge their efforts doing this process with us. And the finalists pitching tonight, congratulations for making this far, and my sincerest congratulations to you. You represent the top 2% of this very competitive pool, and I wish you a very good luck for the rest of tonight. Please welcome the first finalist for tonight, Robert from A2A Cloud. A2A Cloud is building the control layer for AI agents. It provides identity, scope permissions, signed receipts, and replay for every agent action, enabling enterprises to safely deploy autonomous workflows into production. All right, Robert, we are ready when you are.
Awesome. I want to thank all the panelists, judges, applicants, everyone here. If you want to follow along, you can check out the deck. I just sent a link. I will share my screen and we'll get right into it. So I'm Robert. I'm founder of A2A Cloud. We make agents safe to call in production with scope permissions, receipts, replays, and audit trails. Building agents is solved. Running agents together is not. You no longer just have automation. You have agents calling tools, writing code, talking to APIs. But the moment one agent calls another agent, something new happens. You have delegation, and delegation creates a trust boundary, a line where you have to trust the work that another agent did, and you didn't do it yourself. So the boundary raises a question. Who gave the agent permission? What data did it use? What did it change? What files did it write? Right now, most teams answer these questions by looking at cloud logs, screenshots, and hope. It definitely does not work when companies run hundreds or thousands of agents across sales, support, finance, and operations. This is not the first time software has faced this shift. Early on, putting a website online meant using something like cPanel or GeoCities. Then the cloud gave us raw infrastructure, which we had to manage ourselves. It was pretty difficult for a small business to do at first. Then platforms like Vercel and Heroku made shipping one command. Every wave made software easier, and agents are the next wave. 888 Cloud is building that missing layer. We are the permissions runtime layer for agent-to-agent work. Developers deploy a normal agent, and 888 Cloud automatically gives it identity, scope permissions, open API routes, MCP access, receipts, replay, logs, and billing. So an agent isn't just a script running somewhere, it becomes a governed service that other agents, humans, and teams can call safely. Here's the developer experience. You install 888 Pack. You can use any framework you want, LangChain, Crew AI, etc. You run A2A deploy, and in a couple of seconds, you have a live agent. So I'm going to walk you through how A2A solves this multi-agent orchestration. Imagine that you have a support agent, and that agent has to call a billing agent. It has to call a policy agent. It has to call a CRM agent. With A2A Cloud, there's no master key. So when it reaches out to billing, it's not using the billing master key to access all data. It's going to be scoped to that support agent's specific query along with all the other agents. When it actually works together, you can see perfectly the receipts, like the replays of the agents. So we'll switch to that slide here. This is the actual product. This is what a company would actually see. So agent work essentially stops becoming a black box. It becomes governed, inspectable, and repeatable. So the platform is live. I've been building it for 36 days. We have 2 design partners, and the marketplace is live. So this is me. I'm Robert Sears. I've been at the early stage before. I've worked at YC-backed companies. I worked in highly secure, regulated environments like pharma and banking. I've built all of this without raising any money. And why now? And the reason is really simple. The future is not one AI assistant talking to one human. It's millions of specialized agents working together in every company. But before that future can happen, companies need to trust the handoff. That's our wedge. We start with developers deploying governed agents. From there, A2A Cloud becomes a system of record for agent work, and eventually the trusted cloud for autonomous software. Today, people build agents. Tomorrow, companies must govern them. A2A Cloud is creating the infrastructure and the cloud to make this incredibly easy for people at the hobby level all the way up to the enterprise level. This is the company I'm building, and it really excites me. So I know that was a little faster than 5 minutes, but I think we can turn it over to Q&A now.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was perfect timing, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I will hand it over to the judges for Q&A. Any questions from our judges, you may simply unmute.
Hi, Robert. That's pretty fast. You've done a great job. I mean, I'm impressed by the product or what you've built so far. Have you had any commercial interest and traction up to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 design partners who have agents deployed and use them in their main production apps. One agent takes Appify. I don't know if you've heard of it. It helps scrape CRMs. They built like a meta agent around it. So they give it a specific scraping task. The meta agent will decompose all the open API routes for Appify and then come up with a plan to scrape data for them. So that might be like if they're doing venture research, it might check PitchBook and LinkedIn. If they ask questions about influencers, it might use other Appify agents. The other one, Scan to Sell, uses Google APIs and basically reverse image searches products to help find them for Scan to Sell, which allows you to scan barcodes or take a photo of a product and upload it to your Shopify store. These are our close partners of A2A Cloud, and I appreciate their business.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for sharing. I was curious, why do you believe this will be a standalone category and not be subsumed by other identity or other adjacent players who can have this on their platform as a feature?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So at its core, A2A Cloud is essentially a big orchestration layer across Kubernetes with running code. The enterprise and correct play for A2A Cloud is to make all of that open source. if you create an agent force on a closed source platform, the enterprise can't actually run it on-prem, aka you have data leaving. I can dive into details on how storage, file access, and tools are primitives in A Cloud, but the thesis is that essentially like software is going to zero. Right now, I can use like Coder. I don't know if you've heard of them, or Postgres. I can pull in a Helm chart and throw it on my Kubernetes cluster. If I want enterprise support, I reach out to the maintainers. I pay a big license fee. So that's the long-term what not wedge safety plan for A Cloud is you need to be able to bring it to your on-prem deployment at the enterprise level.
So if I understood correctly, you're planning to open source some of this.
Yeah, I think almost all of it. So there's like three prongs to commercialization I'm happy to dive into if you'd like. And I think it might make more sense then. Great. So I personally believe that all software is going to zero over time, and that how you handle relationships with clients is what defines a winning business in the long run. That being said, in the short term, there's plenty of small to medium-sized businesses that need help automating out specific tasks. Each one of those tasks become a standalone agent that are public in a marketplace. So if I solve a specific problem, let's say like I'm helping lawn care maintenance people, and my agent knows the address of the home of all the people, and it goes and it draws polygons in Google Maps and calculates how much fertilizer they need to buy and when to buy it, tracked with price. Once that agent is done, it becomes a primitive economic actor that if I go talk to another lawn care company, they can just go and use that agent. And then the other side of that is indie devs. So indie devs love to deploy agents. Not only can we deploy agents on 8A Cloud, you can actually host websites and databases. Everything is scaled to zero on a technical side, meaning I don't have to pay a crazy amount of compute. So those two kind of feed off of each other and bring the recognition of 8A Cloud up strategically. And then on the enterprise side, you have to validate on that smaller market first, and then be able to have those enterprise conversations where here's my Helm chart, install it. Oh, you need help? XYZ price.
Got it.
Outcome based.
That was the question I was going to ask in terms of the help, right? Like if you're dealing with complex workflows, the more complex a workflow, the more I'm guessing that these customers of yours might need help setting them up, right? So even if I'm taking at your example, right, the agent that that one lawn care company made, and I'm implementing that into my stack, it's going to be a little bit different. So are you relying on the customer to kind of figure that out for them, or how are you creating rails for them to start figuring out how to design their workflows into your agent stack?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the small to medium-sized markets and maybe even the large enterprises would have a clear service offering in 8A Cloud where we would come in and just deliver the service. Pricing would be outcome-based and would change depending on whether or not they're comfortable with that agent being usable by other companies. So I think that it's difficult to tell you exactly how to price, but I think outcome-based.
Got it. So you'll have your software, and then you'll also have a services piece that you'll be able to tack on.
Correct. Yeah, especially to fund early growth.
All right. That is right on time. We're at the 10-minute mark. So now I'll give the judges 2 minutes to jot down their thoughts and remarks. Next one we have on the line is Day from Contrax AI. Contrax AI is a SaaS platform that automates the federal defense bidding, workflow end-to-end, opportunity discovery, feasibility filtering, quote acquisition from suppliers, and bid submission to the DoD. All right, Day, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. Let's go ahead and get this deck going. So, first off, I just want to say thank you guys so much for giving us the opportunity, and I gained so much insight from you guys, all of the judges. So, my name is Day Cantave. I'm the founder of Contrax AI. So, as a consultant, I've worked with over 200 defense contractors, and we've generated over $10 million in contract awards for them with no bad reviews anywhere to be found. I have been an operator at the #1 fastest growing defense contractor in the country, and I was employee #3. And along with that, I bring 6 years of operator knowledge as the senior bidder and the #1 salesman in that company. So unlike most other startups, we're very fortunate to already be profitable. So as I mentioned, I was employee #3 at one of the fastest growing federal contractors in the country. As an operator, I won over 130 federal contracts, and we scaled that company to over $24 million in federal contract awards. Contrax AI is all the proprietary knowledge that I learned over my 6 years in this industry turned into software. Essentially, it tells contractors which contract opportunities they can win and then submits them, allowing them to bid on over 70 contracts at one time. And we're very fortunate to already be cash flow positive. So, the problem. The federal defense market is comprised of over $1 trillion in current spend. We spend more on our defense budget than the next 10 countries do combined. And the aspect of the government that we work with currently issues more than 10,000 contract opportunities every week. But here's the issue. 51% of these contract opportunities go unbid or only one person bids on them. So this is a very untapped market. Now, to make this problem even more relevant, the government's user interface is archaic. As I'm sure you guys know, if you've ever tried to get your license renewed at the DMV or anything like that, it's been a pain. So doing business with the US military is not any better. So every life cycle when it comes to finding and sourcing a quote for a product can take anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks. Now, here's our solution and why I believe that we are defensible. So we score every single product market as high, medium, or low demand using a methodology that I built on the inside as employee number 3, and this logic exists nowhere else. Number 2, we have a founder LLM. So we basically created an AI agent and we trained that LLM on 6 years of my contracting knowledge, making it a domain expert, not a GPT wrapper, as we had discussed a little bit earlier. So every founder interaction that we have makes it smarter, essentially meaning our moat compounds the more we sell. And to take it a step further, our agent reads each contract opportunity and surfaces the fields that I know that determine whether or not a company wins or loses a bid. So a little bit about our traction here. Why do I believe that we're well placed? We have over 50 paying customers, and at the moment we're already cash flow positive with 70% of our users opting for our annual plan. And we also have a YouTube channel, making us the #1 content creators in the defense contracting space. So we have a built-in distribution mode, and our customer acquisition cost is near zero. And I believe that our product is validated from the fact that over 200 contracting firms have paid us for this knowledge before it was software, meaning that our demand is proven and not projected. So why do I believe that we are competitive compared to our counterparts in the space? All of the adjacent platforms in the space have been adapted for aviation or commercial sales or service-based government contracting, but we're the only AI native platform for the DLA workflow, and we do it at a fraction of the cost. Now, a little bit about me as a founder. I've run multiple ultra marathons. I've spoken at Harvard as a national speech and debate tournament competitor, and in high school I was in Marine Corps JROTC. So quite frankly, I just am willing to finish whatever it is that I start. I believe I can sell sand to a beach, and I know the defense industry like the back of my hand. So we operate on a subscription-based pricing model. And as I said, over 70% of our customers opt for our yearly option. So one thing that I would like to leave you guys with is our current product is tangible, it's proprietary, and it's profitable. And this $100,000 that we're looking to get from our competition is growth capital, not runway. So we're already profitable. We've already worked with over 50 companies, and we believe that this money that we will be able to get from this competition will allow us to ship products faster and double down on our marketing budget. And I'm happy to expand on that and go deeper in depth, as I know some of our judges have mentioned they like to hear. So thank you guys for your time and your consideration.
All right. Thank you, Dave. That was on time. And I'll open up the floor to the judges now.
Hey, Dave. This is really cool. Thanks for sharing. I had a question. So first, a comment. So I had to Google what DLA was in the background. So I could use a little help on what DLA is early in the slides as you're talking about it. But I had a question about this idea that that you've got the repeatable revenue. So on the subscription model, is this idea that I'm a government contractor, a potential government contractor looking for opportunities to bid on projects or opportunities, and I'm kind of scanning the platform for those opportunities, or am I using the platform to help me bid on those opportunities, or is it both?
It's both.
Understood. Okay. And is the idea that there's opportunities that are coming out all the time that I would probably be eligible to bid on that I wouldn't otherwise have access to without your platform?
So yes, there's opportunities that are coming out all the time that I think most companies would not. I don't want to say they wouldn't have access to, but I would say they wouldn't have the time and human capital to find, just because, as I mentioned, there's 10,000 that are published every single week. And the government buys over 16 million different line items with almost 1,000 different product markets. So the biggest issue that we found as we worked with 200 companies as a consulting firm is that most companies just quite frankly don't know what to sell. So all of the workflow and the processes that we've implemented over our last 6 years in the space, we've been able to basically remove ourselves from that and just create an algorithm that does that and gives that insight to companies.
Hey Jay, thank you for sharing. I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what is your addressable market, how many such vendors exist, and what how big can this become, and why is it a venture fundable business in that sense?
I have a slide that addresses that. I like this question. So, as of right now, there are 30,000 active, sorry, I believe there's fireworks going off. There are 30,000 active contractors specifically within DLA, and there's a little bit over 120,000 active federal contractors. So, what we believe is our roadmap to scale is corner the DLA market, and then there are other product-based contracting markets, such as selling directly to the Navy and the Air Force, that we want to tap into. And then the consensus in our industry is that selling to DLA, which is the Defense Logistics Agency, essentially it's like a wholesaler for the rest of the military. The government actually buys within itself. Selling to DLA is the hardest kind of government contracting to do. So if you can master this, then going to do other kinds of government contracting is very easy. So we want to address DLA and then the Navy and then the Air Force and then eventually scale to other kinds of service-based contracting, which would bring us to that 120,000 total contractor range. And forecasts predict that we're getting about anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 new contractors a year.
Got it. So 120,000 into 4,000 annual is probably $500 million. So that's kind of the fully, if you sold to everybody, then it would be a $500 million revenue top line company.
Correct. As of right now, our big goal is to corner the DLA market and then divest.
6,000. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, and Dave, and thanks for the details. I'm kind of out of this space myself, and don't know the DLA's market so well, but I think you kind of explained the kind of solution and value prop. And then, we found out more about the SOM, and you're making revenue now. And what's your plans for kind of that scale up and where you're headed from capital infusion and where this is going to take you on this round?
Yeah, I love this question. So you guys mentioned like crypto and then e-commerce and then dropshipping. I believe that doing business with the federal government is going to be like the next iteration of that or like the next big thing in the next couple years. So we have only done marketing via long form content just because we believe that the kind of consumers that consume long form content are usually serious buyers, right? But we want to go into the short form content space and we want to make this accessible for everybody. All of our competitors are only dealing with enterprise clients. Our biggest competitor only has 3 clients right now. And we want to go ahead and tackle the short form content and we want to expose this industry through the use of short form content with a marketing budget because the biggest issue is not whether or not people are willing to get into the industry. It's just whether or not they know the industry exists. And kind of to illustrate that, right, as we're talking about it, most of the judges, I'm sure the other people are like, I didn't even know that this was a thing. So our issue has not been whether or not our product has been good enough or that our product is the viable solution for this market. It's just more often than not, my sales team, they usually are exposing people to the market when they go through our sales funnel. So we believe that our process to scale is just exposing more people to the market and then obviously improving the current features that we have.
All right, we are at the 5-minute mark. Sorry if Zachary has anything to follow up. We just have to go on with the schedule. As usual, I'll give the 2 minutes for judges to write down some remarks and do the transition. Thank you so much, Day, again, for building Contrax AI. Next company and the finalist we have is Robert from Prilog. It's our second Robert of the day. Prilog is building an AI remediation platform for engineering teams. It turns production errors into root cause analysis, verified code fixes, and ready to review pull requests. All right, after Day takes down the slides, we will have Robert slides ready. And yeah, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Robert, founder and CEO of Prilog, and we make software heal itself. Meet Alex. He wakes up in the middle of the night because there is some issue in production. He needs to dig through logs, monitoring traces, and try to figure out what's actually going on to actually fix the issue. But what if Alex never had to wake up to fix this issue? Well, he can go on our website, sign up quickly, connect all their tools they have at the moment, like monitoring, logs, traces, code bases, and then we have a system in place that already detects whenever something goes wrong. We take that issue, we find the root cause, we draft a fix, and give Alex the PR to review so that he can actually focus on reviewing and put all the energy into reviewing the fix and merging it into production and not into debugging and going through different logs and noises. So once the fix is ready, Alex can create the PR quickly in GitHub, ping someone from the team or review it himself, and it can go directly to production. With this, Alex can keep sleeping well, and we take care of the fixes. And not only that, but most importantly, the company saves a ton of money, especially during outages. As we all know, with AI slop everywhere nowadays, this becomes even more important. We're live at the moment. We launched a couple of weeks ago, and we already have 6 active pilots. Now, this is at the moment unpaid pilots, but we aim to close them very soon so that we can convert them into paid. Some of the blockers we have are mainly compliance for enterprise clients, but we are working closely with Vanta to solve that and convert and continue with our pipeline. On the pricing side, we charge per usage and per generated fix, but we also do have bundles per month where we offer support on top. And while the pricing is still experimental and this in discussion with our customers, we don't see a big pushback on this pricing so far. And while there are other tools at the moment that try to solve this, there is no tool that goes end to end and covers the full cycle of a developer and an engineer. And this is what our moat is and where we want to dominate, is taking the full end-to-end 99% of automation. And then when we have a high confidence fix, we ping the engineers to review that. And the bottom-up TAM is 6 billion, calculated based on our average ACV. But I personally believe it's much bigger than this. And in terms of go-to-market, our growth is built right into the product. So every fix that is generated and every PR that is created is exposing Prilog to the rest of the team and the company. On top of that, at the moment, we have signed 2 go-to-market sales strategy partnerships, one in Europe and one in Japan. Especially the one in Japan is quite important because it's very hard to sell there if you don't have the local support. And we are at the moment working with preparing everything for going into the US market. And the team that is building Prilog previously bootstrapped Mozok, a software consultancy, from 0 to $1 million in ARR in Germany. And these are some of the clients we've worked with along this tenure. And we've lived this pain everywhere. And it's still happening in every single software company. I've seen it personally as being an engineer for more than 13 years. And I think it's enough. I think we need to really put some more effort into making software a bit more quality. The road to 100 million is straightforward. We will land with SMB via PLG, then expand into mid-market and get to be enterprise ready so that we can become the infrastructure as a service for bigger companies. We are currently raising $1 million in pre-seed. With this, we aim to unlock 3 million ARR in the next 18 months. And especially and most importantly is to be enterprise ready so that we can actually sell to these big clients. And yeah, that's it. Imagine a world without software bugs.
I think maybe my first question is just your customer base. Yeah, I mean, are you talking about? I mean, one thing I didn't see it could be helpful is to understand the competitive landscape. I think I've seen debugging tools. I think as you showed the demonstration of the guy at sleep and he can turn on the resources that he needs to get from you, and it goes back into GitHub and he can evaluate that. maybe even autonomously if that was allowed. But tell me more about the competitive landscape and kind of how you see this differentiating yourself in the market.
Yeah, definitely. So there are quite a lot of tools in the market at the moment on the monitoring side, pre-AI. And also in terms of competitive landscape, there are companies entering last year and this year especially, trying to solve this issue. But what gives us an advantage here is that we are taking the full end-to-end workflow automation, and we're not just putting like AI on top of what's already there. And I think that we don't need to give engineers more tools and more noise and make it more complicated. It already is. We need to simplify it and solve the problem in a more holistic end-to-end way. And this is our approach, and we haven't seen so far anyone doing it to an extent that we have. And on the other mode, more on the product side, we have a memory and context layer built internally where every company learns over time and has a specialized and custom engine that not at the moment it's not fine-tuned, but over time also when we have data, we can also have verticalized SLMs for every company and every code base and language so that it's actually getting smarter and it's hard to replicate.
Thanks, Robert. I think my question's also on very similar lines, that coding is too much in the path of the foundation models. Coding is just such a hot space, and everything around it is become pretty competitive. There's also the whole category of AI SREs, which is kind of solving a very similar problem. They've raised hundreds of millions of funding as well. So I'm curious, what do you think will differentiate you? I mean, and of course, I get the product is broad based, but that alone doesn't cut it. Do you have anything else on your mind which will help you cut the noise and for Prilog to become the solution of choice?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. And I think you're referring to Resolve AI as a competitor, which they raised quite a lot in the SRE space. But I would first go back to similar answers before. They're approaching it from giving agents and AIs and chatbots to engineers to quickly find the issue, but they're not going end to end and saying, here's the fix. Those, I think, are two different problems. And I believe that because of the nature of AI, how it works, and also bugs in themselves are very scoped, very small, compared to like if you're building with clouds and feature, it's much more different. But when you have a bug, you actually know where it originated. You have a complete stack trace log, and you can run simulations on top of that and fix the issue with very high confidence. And because of all these factors, we believe we can really automate it 99%.
There's a good presentation. I really like the example. I think that because it's, you're so early in the game right now, it's still feeling a little ephemeral for me. And so one of the questions I have is, with your design partners that you've already locked in, are there any KPIs or any specific examples or any case studies that you're planning to do with these early partners to be able to show the problems you can actually solve with your system?
Definitely. Great question. And it's on our minds. We need to allow for some time to pass so that we can build up the case study and the numbers. But so far, we already see a massive improvement, especially in the MTTR getting reduced to approximately 90% for these companies that we test with. So for some of them, it's a couple of hours to actually minutes, especially when you have like a microservice approach in an enterprise where you have like 50 services and you need to figure out where is actually the problem. But yeah, we will work towards building a case study very soon so we can publish those.
All right. If that is all the questions from the judges, we will head into transition. Thank you, Robert, for the presentation. All right. The last finalist, but certainly not the least, is Juliet from Kindred. Kindred is building a deterministic reasoning engine that produces submission-ready regulatory filings, aiming to get life-saving medical devices to patients in weeks instead of months, with filings defensible to any regulator. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So, everyone in this room has one thing in common, and that's the need of healthcare. From incubators to the walkers to the insulin, every single chapter of our life, we're dependent on a medical device. So we're Kindred, and we believe that the world is far more better if the devices today can reach the users much faster. and this is for the benefit of the society. So we are building a regulatory intelligence layer where we're starting with agentic regulatory filings. So I'm a lawyer from Sweden, and I lived through this problem where one of the first companies I met built a device that could detect cancer in the body before it even emerged. But they've never launched it to the market because we had to go through 137 text-heavy requirements. They spent 18 months understanding these requirements and $2 million on consultants, only to find out that a competitor was faster. So there's a huge wall here. There's fragmented regulations that is constantly evolving. It's expensive to produce these filings, and if you're trying to use an LLM, you will probably be held liable because if a regulator asks, even years later, where this claim comes from, you will probably not be able to answer that. So that's why we're so excited to launch our first product, which is our regulatory engine, where we can turn any innovation into a defensible filing. So all the company needs to do is to produce their intended use and to upload documentation about the product. Then Kindred would do its magic, and its agents will walk our reasoning engine deterministically, where we have put together guidelines, pre-market notifications, precedents, and we've also have our own proprietary data set where 250 lawyers have encoded the law. And so that's why we can produce a defensible filing. And our team has lived through this issue where I'm a lawyer, worked at top international law firm, and also advised in the European Parliament. Aga, my co-founder, he is a full stack engineer, also worked years in the regulated space. We also have head of strategist from the life science space and an advisor who is actively drafting these regulations in the European Parliament. So without Kindred, these models, they don't have any domain expertise, no regulatory grounded, but they also don't want to produce these submissions because there is a risk of liability. So we at Kindred, we did something that nobody else was willing to do. We went out and found 250 regulatory experts, and we encoded the law article by article, and we made it into a practical checklist, what you actually need to launch it. So every claim you make and we make in the application is actually verified, it's defensible, and it's ready to be delivered to the regulator. So instead of 18 months, we're actually able to produce a filing in only a few weeks. And the product we built so far is that the company will upload its documentation and its intended use. And then Kindred will do its magic and go through articles and the case law, and we will then find what's missing or what's lacking or what's not strong enough in the application, and a human is able to verify it. So one of the customer discoveries we did was that they said that Kindred should ship our product so that we can focus on building the products to improve patient outcome, but also to reduce the total cost of care. So we have 5 early pilots that we're working really closely with. We have been the winner of Cornell Startup Studio and the winner of Columbia AI Startup Challenge. And we also received an angel investment. And we're targeting really small teams who are usually having combined products with AI and a device. And we're only charging them once they have submitted their application. So with this win, we really hope that we can spend it on the reasoning engine, on the experts, but also on the technical side of the product, since we are really, really careful to build the trust that is needed. And at Kindred, so we make sure that the products that matters the most, like a cancer detecting tool, can reach the people who need them. Thank you so much.
All right, Julia, thank you for your presentation. Very nice. And for this startup in particular, Zachary, I know that you works in the adjacent fields, so I will open up the floor to you first.
Thanks, Julia. Well done. Thanks for the presentation. You know, I operate in the European countries as well as the US. And do you have, I mean, this seems very market oriented around Europe. Is there an intent on regulatory filings for the US? Maybe that I'll start with that. Or
Yeah,
is this, is
nice
this
to meet you. I saw that you have experience in the medical field. So yes, we are targeting our go-to-market strategies to target European companies, but that are launching in the US. So 4 of our customers actually will launch in the US, this Worldish, Regnora, and Asker. They will do the FDA submissions. So that's who we are working with at the
okay?
moment.
And so you're really talking about an IDE, specifically about the regulatory filing for a trial, or you're talking about product approval in this space, or
Product approved.
yeah,
Yeah.
for market
Yeah.
entry. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of, yeah, I just have a lot of questions that as you aggregate all this data together and you bring in all of it, I see a real legal sense, but there is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes about authoring the components of that. And do you do anything around authoring, taking, say, the manufacturing data or the preclinical, any of the validation that's happened up until that point? Do you do any analysis of that in the
Yeah,
background?
we do. So right now, actually, this pilot is not here because we just started to work with them. They're from Europe and going to launch in the US, and they have no idea what regulatory pathway they will do. So what we're doing now is to do the pre-submissions documents for them. So we're helping them to draft and to produce their documents, but also to help them to produce the intended use, because that will affect the regulatory pathway, but it will also affect the testing they need to do. So collecting that information is the first step. And then once we have that, our reasoning engine can start working and start to both draft the application, of course, but also see what kind of documentation is missing, and in that way make it sort of a timeline so that they have control over the regulatory filing, because most teams, they don't want to outsource these things to expensive consultants, and there's 100 experts out there, there's 100 lawyers out there, but they really want to be in control of the process, but also understand what's included in the process. So it's more to visualize the process, but also to help them to understand which way is the best for them, which way is the most cost efficient way, but also, of course, how can they reach the market the fastest?
Yeah, I definitely am behind moving products to the market faster, and I work in the medical device space. But I think that this has a niche, and I think that there's a lot of components in the pre-submission work that goes on. A lot of companies have to prove in all the validation that has to submit their claims. I think it's a good solution. It really hits the point of moving faster. But I have a lot of kind of probably more questions to ask, and we can probably exchange some information after this. But
Yeah, I
I'll
would
leave it
love
to some of
to.
the others.
Yeah, you just need to take it step by step and
Yeah,
really divide the
yeah.
process. So it's not like we need to do everything at once, but we're starting to work really closely with these design partners and see where they're at in this submission phase. So yeah, but thank you for your questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julia. I looked at the commercial plan. I'm curious, why go after small companies and not like large life science companies? And how are they? What's preventing you from going after, say, Gilead Life Sciences? I don't know if they do, or Johnson and Johnson, or the likes of them.
Yeah, so 2 reasons, or even 3 reasons. So one of our competitors, it's not on this slide, unfortunately. Last 2 weeks, they raised $95 million, and they are targeting like the really big players. And often they have a team of regulatory experts and lawyers, but we don't really want to sell to those people. We want to sell to the companies and make the tool really, really user friendly. And then we have, as you can see here on the competitive slide, we have the traditional PVC and Harvey, who is more legal tech things. And then we have, the compliance things, and then we have the general purpose models. But we really want to target the end-to-end life cycle space. And we think that with AI, there is like a whole new market of where people actually are able to build devices. That's at least what we're noticing on the ground floor. People are building these devices at a much lower cost. They're doing combined devices with AI. So there is like a hole in the market as we see it, of not targeting like the bigger player. And that's also makes us excited to help these companies be able to launch, because before they were not able to launch because it's too expensive. So I hope that answered your question.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm curious about your go-to-market strategy. I know you've got these design partners, and it seems like they're pretty impressive. But how do you actually get to this market where it seems like a pretty specific pain point, right? I'm looking to get my device into market, and I'm probably finding a lot of consultants that are paying for a lot of advertising on the Googles of the world. And so how do you find those customers to convince them to use your platform versus just going the tried and true way of using a consultant or hiring a lawyer?
Yeah, so I love sales and we're targeting a kind of founder market fit where I have a really big network in Europe, and we've been going to a lot of life sciences events here in the US where a lot of European companies are targeting the US market. So that's one way, but that's also why we would really appreciate this funding, because if we build a good enough product where we have a lot of use cases, and we do have a line now of companies, of 5 other companies who we cannot take in because we need to build the product so much credible. And as another judge mentioned, there's a lot of different questions going in here, how we're going to do this. So it's like an exciting problem that no one really has solved. And we need to just take it step by step by building credibility, targeting these teams for now, and then slowly get into the bigger market, I would say.
Do you have any projection, explanation of your revenue model?
Yes. So as I mentioned, we do target the pricing after the outcome based, and that's also because AI is really moving from answer to action. So we take the annual retainer, but when we look at like the bigger life cycle, we have the monitoring tools and other things we can also commercialize in a way. So, but this is our revenue model this far.
All right, great line of questioning from the judges, and 4 fascinating presentations from our finalists. Another round of applause for Robert from A2A, Dave from Contrax AI, Robert from Prilog, and Julia from Kindred. Great work.
Zank is going to be announcing, but I'm going to tell you guys very, very close. I think this was a very well balanced, so well done. Regardless, I think, of the result, all of you are winners. I believe you're the top 2% of all the applications that we saw. So that in itself, it's already amazing. Let's stop, because I know that you're anxious. Zank, you have the results. Go for it.
All right, enough drum roll. The winner of the 8th rendition of the Lightning Round pitch competition at 1752 is Kindred. Congratulations, Julia and Kindred.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm crying. Really thoughtful questions, so I appreciate it. And I learned a lot from you from the panel as well. And I look forward to stay in touch with all of you.
Yeah, Julia, amazing work, amazing startup. You've built something real. Judges have reflected that in their judgments. And you'll be fast-tracked to the final round of due diligence for our accelerator program for a chance at 100K, the check size. You'll also get exclusive access to our network of mentors. And for you and for the rest of the finalists, we will all have $1 million plus in perks and also getting press release. And for the rest of the finalists, you will get sponsorship when you apply to our startup programs. So I appreciate everybody's efforts. Julia, congratulations again. But for the rest of the finalists and everybody who has applied, great work, and really appreciate you staying with us on this journey, going so far to the finals, pitching live. And to close out this amazing event, I would like to invite one of our judges. I would like to invite Keith to basically give him a summary of what you've seen today and give some words of encouragement and guidances to the winner and all the finalists alike.
Yeah, congratulations, Julia. It was a great presentation. I think it was a very close call. So thanks to everybody for presenting tonight. I know it's not easy to go through the process of the lengthy process of becoming the top 2% of all the startups that submitted here. But I was really impressed with the use of AI from all of the different startups that came tonight to solve particular problems. I think it speaks exactly to what we were talking about in the panel about AI not just being used for generalized senses, but actually being used to solve real problems that people are experiencing. And each of you demonstrated that you have a unique edge in your particular wedge to solve a problem and using technology to do that. And so that's one of the things that we really look for. I also really appreciated the early traction that each of you showed. You're at different stages in your journeys, but you did a great job of showing that traction is just not customers in the bank, but design partners, advisors, and your teams. And so that's one of the things that we really look for with early stage startups. And I really appreciated how curious and responsive each of you were. One of the things that goes a long way, especially when investors are asking the hard questions, is how founders respond to us in being curious, admitting when they don't know the answer, admitting when they might not have the answer yet, and then explaining how they're really being very strategic about going after the answers to those questions. And so I just wanted to thank you for demonstrating that you guys all know your industries extremely well, that you're very curious about the things that you're building and the problems you're solving, and that you've really thought very intensely about the problems you're solving and the business that you're creating. So thank you very much. I dropped something in the chat. We built something at our family office called VCmatch.ai. So we built that so you can feed your deck into it, get a quick analysis of how pitch ready you are, and then be able to match you against your top matches about VCs that you're most likely to raise from. So,
all right, Keith. Thank you so much for wrapping things up for us. And that was a great ending to a perfect night. I would like to thank again all the applicants who have applied, the finalists who have pitched live, the judges, people in the audience, and the 1752 team. I'd like to shout out to Thaisa and Retta. Without them, this event would not have been possible running smoothly. And special thanks to our partners and sponsors, Ramp, Stubbs, and Innovent. All right, that is a wrap, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
All right. Fantastic job, everyone. Have a good night. Until next time. All right.
Thank you, and great job, everyone.
good night.
Thank you. Have a good one.